At Third Space Charity, we support a mentally resilient community by offering accessible counseling care to young adults between the ages of 18 and 29. This is Mental Health Matters, where we discuss topics and services related to mental health and wellness in our community. My guest today is Meaghan Duckett of This Space Belongs to You. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, okay, first question. What is This Space Belongs to You?
I know that feels like a big question. So This Space Belongs to You is a queer and BIPOC social service for people aged 12 to 24 within the South Okanagan. We launched October of last year. So right now we're facilitating free one-to-one counseling. And as of in a few weeks, actually, we're launching some group programming for individuals as well. We also have a gender-affirming clothing and wear line for individuals to access for free. We operate at a Living Positive Resource Center, so the majority of our services are in person, but we do facilitate some online. And it's an inclusive space. It's a safe space. It's all facilitated by queer and BIPOC counselors and staff. We believe that representation is super important. I think a lot of young people don't often see themselves represented in the person sitting across from them, so we kind of made this foundational in our practice. We hope to continue to grow. Yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell.
It sounds really exciting. For people who maybe don't know what the acronym means, what does IMPOC stand for?
So Indigenous Black People of Color.
Okay.
Yes.
So why do you think it's important, maybe get into a little more detail on that, to have something really specifically targeting IMPOC folks?
Sure. So I think that I kind of mentioned that young people don't often see themselves represented in their counselors. So we thought this was really important to have. I think a lot of people of color don't access social services, experience discrimination, racism, marginalization when they access social services because they're often not met with people that resemble their social locations and their intersections of their identities. So we think that's important. I think that people of color continue to be pushed out of spaces for all of these reasons that I mentioned. So we wanted to create a space that they saw themselves in and felt safe in, to be themselves and to connect with other people in their community. And again, they're in this community. There's a lot of people of color in this community. We just don't often see them accessing services for those reasons.
So how do people access service when they want to work with your organization?
Yeah, so we have a website. So we have a referral form online for the one-to-one counseling and the group programming. You can send me an email, and the online referral forms, we try to make them as user-friendly as possible. So individuals can just fill out referrals, and then a counselor or a staff will contact them pending their availability.
So what is it that made you create this? Like, what is it that motivated you? I mean, everything you said about why it's needed is absolutely true. Yeah. So what was the spark that made you say, I'm going to make this happen?
That's a good question. I was actually asked this the other day. So I've only been in this area for about 2 years. So about 2 years ago, I lived in Ontario. It was during the height of COVID. It was during the height of a lot of violence against the queer community. It was the height of Black Lives Matter. A lot of violence against people of color, specifically the Black community, was going on my TV, on my social media. And I think that a lot of queer and people of color were struggling during this time because of the pandemic and because of all of this violence that was happening. So I Googled how to create a website for dummies, and I created This Space Belongs to You. So then for leading up to when we moved here, I facilitated support for individuals online. And again, I just saw a need. It's such a gap in services, and these communities were struggling at such high rates. So it was important for me to create spaces for them.
So how did you make it happen? It's one thing to create a website and start trying to offer service. At some point, you need some funding. How did that story go?
So my partner and I moved here, again, 2 years ago. And I've always been applying for funding to expand the program, because when we started it, it was just me. I wanted to welcome a lot of other people on it. It's a collective approach. That's foundational for us. So I applied for funding all the time, at night, in the morning, on my spare time. And then the Kelowna General Hospital Foundation funded us for a 6-week pilot in October of last year. And they wanted us to produce data showing that this was a needed service within this area. Since then, the pilot has been extended till the summer, so we're hoping to continue to operate.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How popular has it been? Like, Have you found a lot of people applying for counseling? Are you busy? How many folks work with you?
Very busy. So I think we launched in October, and I think within a few weeks, the counselors had full caseloads. So we operated a little bit of a wait list. We've supported a lot of individuals on that wait list, and we continue to do that. I've been lucky enough to welcome on 7 other counselors who all identify as queer and people of color. So they continue to work at this space, and yeah,
that's exciting.
busy.
Clearly you are filling a real need that was there. This wasn't just something that you identified on your own.
Yeah.
What are the sorts of issues that are coming up in sessions for people without obviously violating confidentiality? Are there certain themes or issues that kind of come up regularly?
I would say a big one would be mental health. Of course, shows up a lot. I think mental health is everywhere, like as we were talking before this. So mental health's a big one. Race-related stress, especially being within this community, at their schools, at their jobs. A lot of our individuals speak about a lot of like homophobia or transphobia, hate walking down the streets, again, in their schools, in the bathroom. So that's a big thing. So we talk about that a lot, but we're also talking a lot about the impact. Another thing that comes up a lot is the want for community. So the want for connection and community among other people that represent themselves. Those are probably the biggest things that come up.
Yeah. So who else do you have on your team? You said you have 7 other counselors as well as yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe a range of sort of their backgrounds or their areas of expertise.
So we have so much background, so much expertise in all the counselors. So a lot of them come with a significant mental health background, whether it's working in treatment facilities, one-to-one counseling settings, school boards, frontline outreach work. We have a lot of our counselors come with addiction, substance use experience. A lot, if not all of our counselors have experience working with queer and marginalized and racialized folks. That was really important for us because that adds another layer to the intersections of people. A lot of them, come from this area or come from other areas. We have a counselor that's taking on just an Indigenous caseload, which is important to us as well. But yeah, such a plethora of experiences they come with.
So basically anyone could come and seek service and probably find a really good fit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's excellent. So what is your big dream for this space belongs to you? I mean, it seems like you've already created something pretty substantial. Where do you see it going? What do you hope for?
Dreams. I think my dream is that it continues to run. I hope that it doesn't stop. I hope at whatever capacity we can still continue to run it and to serve this community. My dream is to continue to offer one-to-one counseling, group programming. We would like to continue to operate clothing drives and gender-affirming wear. We would also like to continue to facilitate like community connections, whether that be a drop-in center, accessibility for people as well. Again, we're operating out of Living Positive Resource Center. We're slowly outgrowing it. So the dream is one day to have kind of our own physical space. But yeah, my dream is that it just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little about, again, for folks who may not be familiar with the term, what is gender-affirming care?
Gender-affirming care. So a lot of individuals go to access care, whether it be at any healthcare settings. That's a common example that I use. And gender-affirming care would be pronouns respected, their gender identity, their gender expressions being respected, and not only just respected and validated and embraced. I think that often sometimes doesn't happen, especially within care facilities and especially within healthcare. So we try to make sure that essentially we're validating individuals' identities deeply.
And you talked about clothing drives for that. What does that look like?
So we have received a lot of community donations for clothing for individuals. So I have boxes on boxes in my office of clothing. We have donations like binders, packers, any type of gender-affirming clothing that individuals want that they can access for free when they come to us. And they don't necessarily have to fill out a referral form. They can just send them an email and drop by and get whatever they need.
Yeah. So how has it been for you doing this work in what is still a relatively new community for you? And to be frank, is not a very obviously diverse community. I've lived in Kelowna 25 years, and it has become much more diverse, but I feel like we still have a long way to go. So what's it like doing this sort of work, specifically in that context?
I think coming from Ontario, the area that I lived in, it was so saturated with social services, so many, and I'm not recreating the wheel. This is done in many communities. It's done in Vancouver, which is the closest one to us. So I think coming here, not seeing it, I saw it as an opportunity to create something here. I also think, excuse me, going off you saying that this community has a long way to go, I think that the voices here are so loud. I think the queer voices are so loud. I think the people of color are so loud and so vibrant. And I've really seen these communities come together to support a service like this, to support the people that we're supporting. So it's been quite vibrant for me, honestly. It's hard, of course. We're existing in a system that continues to oppress these groups. But I think these groups are quite loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And love wins.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So on your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as ally, advocate, activist, and social worker. Why did you choose those labels for yourself?
Wow. I haven't looked at my LinkedIn and I forgot what I wrote, honestly. But I feel like that deeply defines me. I think as a queer person, as a queer person of color, I continue to advocate for the different intersections that I have. I continue to advocate within my job as a social worker within the mental health field for people that maybe their voices aren't being heard or systemically their voices have been silenced. Yeah, I think it definitely describes me. I want to continue to bring along other advocates and allies along with me. I think it's a collective fight and a collective experience.
So how have your past life and experiences kind of led you to this and where you are now?
Mm-hmm. So I've been working in the mental health field for probably 8 to 10 years now. I think all the privileges and my past experiences, my lived experience has propelled me to do this work. I think that I come with a lot of strength from the people that have come before me, a lot of the queer pioneers that have come before me, a lot of the people of color that have come before me to kind of grant me these privileges to create this space. So I think I'm supposed to be here. And I think a lot of people that look like me and that exist in the world like me should be here.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about the work you do apart from This Space Belongs to You that pays the bills.
Yeah, that. So I do sexual violence work. That's kind of my Monday to Friday. And then I do This Space Belongs to You as well.
Okay, so what does that look like again for folks who may not know what that is?
Yeah, so I do a lot of mental health support, a lot of case management, specifically with survivors of sexual violence or who have experienced significant traumas throughout their life, which kind of transpires into This Space Belongs to You because a lot of similar things. I work with people in both capacities.
Yeah. When we talk about mental health in all its ways, we talk a lot about self-care. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious what that means for you because this is challenging, heavy work that you're doing. So what does self-care look like for you?
I think self-care for me has always been stillness, quiet, whatever that looks like quiet in my car, quiet at home. That's a big thing for me. I think within this field, there's so much going on all the time. So whenever I can keep my mind quiet is a good thing. Time in nature is big for me. I think that's probably the top way that I self-care for myself. I think connecting and debriefing with other people in the field is important. I think that's really important for my self-care. Not everybody can connect to hearing such stories of suffering and struggles all the time. So that's a big part of my self-care. I have a dog. I feel like a dog is a great way to self-care as well.
Dogs are the best.
Yes, they are.
I often think that I like dogs more than people sometimes.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So remind us again, how can people get in touch with you and to find out more about Space Belongs to You or to sign up for support?
Yeah. So our website, thissspacebelongs2.com, has all the information. The referral form is online. My email is there. We also have an Instagram, This Space Belongs to You as well. I'm very active on all of those, so I usually do my best to respond.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining us and telling us good luck with This Space Belongs to You.
Thank you so much, Karen.
This is Mental Health Matters. We'll see you next time. Our guest today is Lauren Nutbrown, who is a counselor and an alumni of the Third Space Charity Practicum Training Program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Are you originally from Kelowna, born and bred, or?
Actually, I'm from Penticton. So I moved here, I think it was probably about 9 years ago. I came here to come back to school, to go back to UBCO. And then I've stayed here ever since then. I just absolutely love Kelowna and the community here. So I'll be here for a long time.
Okay. So when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I always knew I wanted to be a counselor, which I think is maybe odd for some people, but I was very fortunate to have a lot of good support when I was a kid. So that was something that kind of just sat with me, and I knew that I wanted to provide later in life. So it's been a long standing dream to do this. So I'm really excited that we're here now.
So what is it specifically? Like, is there a point where you're like, this is what made me want to become a clinical counselor? Or like you say, it's just always been there. I mean, how does a 4-year-old know what a counselor is?
Well, for me, I have ADHD. And so when I was a kid, I struggled a lot with anxiety. So I was really fortunate when I was younger to meet a counselor that I really connected with. And the counselor was just so compassionate, so kind and validating. And I felt like I really had a space where I could speak, be heard, and kind of be who I really was. And I knew that I always wanted to provide something like that for someone else. She kind of became my hero, and I really looked up to her. So I just remember always sort of thinking like, I need to figure out how to do this in some capacity. I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it needed to happen. And then as I got older, it just kind of continued to cement itself in my brain. That was what I was going to do.
So what was the process like getting the education you needed to become a clinical counselor?
Well, I started at UBCO in 2008, so it was a while ago. And originally, when I was there, I was doing an arts program, a 4 years arts program, and kind of was trying to pick between if I was going to go the psychology route or the social work route. I ended up sticking with psychology, but it took a long time for me. I had some bumps in the road, as people do, as students do. And I eventually decided, I think it was in 2018, after hearing a health talk from Ed Weiss, one of our supervisors at Third Space, just in terms of what it was like in career development and where I was at kind of in the spectrum of things for life. And I decided that was at the point where I was going to really commit to psychology. And I finished my undergrad in arts. And then not too long afterwards, I started a master's degree in counseling psychology. So I just finished that in December. It was about, I'd say, 6.5 years altogether.
And what was that process like? I think the concept of doing an extra degree, a master's, is pretty daunting.
Yeah. It's, I started in 2020. And so during the pandemic, it was, tough with a lot of the different sort of life circumstances that were happening for everybody. But the sort of benefit to that is that everything went online, and that's how I learn very well. I prefer to have online classes. The process was pretty full on. We are almost constantly doing some sort of writing project. We're always, reading different textbooks about different sort of theories for counseling, different sort of theories about different sort of mental illnesses. So it was really intense. There was a lot of group projects. And then towards the end, we had 8 months of practicum, and that's where I came and started with Third Space, which was awesome.
So the perfect segue. What made you want to do your practicum with Third Space Charity?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I had talked to Ed at one point. So Ed Weiss is one of the counselors that's the supervisor, I should say, at Third Space. And Ed had been doing a health talk at this one health event that I had been at. And he just mentioned about how certain people, in their later 20s start to sort of develop that really solid sense of self and kind of know what they want to do. And I just felt really inspired. And so after I left the talk that day, I ended up signing back up for school again because I had taken a little bit of a break in my undergrad. And I walked on to the school campus, I'd say probably within the first week of being there, and I saw Ed. And I went in, and Ed's like, come in, come chat. And so I looked at him and I was like, you're actually the reason why I'm here right now. So Ed and I had a good chat for a little bit. I told him it was my goal to be a counselor. And he said, okay, you know what, when you're ready, come be with us. This is what we do. We train counselors. We supervise them and help them with their goals. And I just kept that in mind throughout the rest of my undergrad. And when it came to the time where I had to apply for practicums, Ed and I were in good communication, and I just knew it would be the right fit. I think with Third Space, it really feels like home. So I just knew it was the right spot to be.
What has surprised you most about working as a counselor? You had these dreams, these ideas of what it might be. What has surprised you most?
I think what surprised me most would probably be how much fun it is. And I laugh because I think that sometimes people think that being a counselor is a hard job, and it is. It can be really difficult. But my clients are so funny. They're so smart. They're so dynamic. I'm so lucky to work with them. So I walk away from my sessions a lot of times feeling so much lighter than how I started the day. So it's really been really joyful. And I think that kind of surprised me in the best sort of way.
Yeah, because you think about, supporting people's mental health. You might be meeting with some at the lowest point in their life or the hardest point in their life, and that could feel so heavy.
It definitely does feel heavy sometimes, but I kind of feel that is the biggest privilege that I can have as a counselor. I think the best way I can compare it is, when you have a really good heart-to-heart with your best friend, sometimes those topics are kind of heavy, what you're talking about, but you just feel so good. You just feel so heard, and sort of like the love is there. Those hard moments make it all worth it as a counselor, because we get to do that together with my client and I. We get to do that and kind of create that relationship that makes us both feel really good.
Right. Mm-hmm. You've been pretty open that you really have a soft spot or a niche area where you would really want to support folks who maybe are dealing with disordered eating. Yeah. Where does that come from?
Yeah, so I had an eating disorder for about 10 years. It was about in 2016, after, a lot of trial and error and sort of figuring out what was going on with my health issues, that I was fortunate enough to meet a naturopath that had sort of guided me towards looking at how my issues were with food. It was not long after that I was diagnosed with an eating disorder. And I was in an inpatient program at the Kelowna Eating Disorder Program for about 3 years. And they did absolutely amazing, phenomenal work. I graduated from that program in about 2019. And after everything that they had done for me, I just decided it was really important for me to give back to the community. So at times I do public speaking. I'm not always the best public speaker, but I quite enjoy it. And I just want to give back in any way I can to help Kelowna, because Kelowna is a very beautiful city. There's also a lot of pressure here in order to look a certain way. So I wanted to kind of help change the narrative here, that beauty more comes from the inside, that beauty is more something that we can find within, and make that a safe place for people to feel.
How do you feel about, the so-called diet culture and the diet industry?
Yeah, not so good. I think that the diet culture the diet industry spends a lot of money in order to sort of make people feel bad about themselves. And that way they can sell their products. So I really feel strongly that diet culture is very ingrained in our society. And that if we can do anything to sort of lighten that in any way, then we can help people feel healthier in terms of how they view their bodies, how they view their lifestyles, take less pressure off. And that, to me, feels really important for our community.
When you were working with us at Third Space Charity, you single-handedly organized a public event on intuitive eating. For folks who've never heard of intuitive eating, what is it and how does it fit into this whole picture of diet culture and the diet industry?
Yeah, so for the diet industry, they spend a lot of time and money basically saying that we need to eat a certain way to look a certain way in order to be healthy. But healthy is, it can look in a variety of different sort of body shapes, sizes, different abilities. Healthy is, I think, a broader term than what the diet culture industry wants us to think. So for that event in particular, I wanted to talk about something called intuitive eating. And that's kind of where we go back to kind of learn what it's like to eat in a way that feels comfortable for us. So we start to listen to our our hunger cues, how we feel when we're hungry or when we're full, what sort of foods that we want to eat that are actually enjoyable for us. And we start to learn too with intuitive eating that it's okay to enjoy food with our friends, our family, and make it something that's more a part, like a fun part of our culture, as opposed to something that feels really daunting and constricting.
There often feels like it's sort of reward and punishment based, like I worked out this morning so I can have a chocolate bar this afternoon, which doesn't seem like a healthy approach.
Yeah, it's something I feel pretty strongly about, that, with food, it doesn't always have to be a reward, and it doesn't have to be a punishment. I think that food can be something that we enjoy at all times of the day. And when we take that stress off, that it makes us easier for us to enjoy it. So I'd like to encourage people not to worry about whether they're earning their food, but just to enjoy it in a way that they feel excited about.
Yeah. What is the primary message that you would share with, young adults, not just young women, young men as well, who in this era of rampant social media are feeling so much pressure to look a certain way and present a certain way? What would your advice or words of wisdom be, given all you've gone through?
Well, first of all, I think that it's quite normal to feel a lot of pressure. There is so much pressure to look a certain way or be a certain way. So I want to validate that that's a really tough experience to go through, and really encourage people to reach out for help if they feel like something's not really feeling that good for them. If they see a message that they're kind of questioning, that makes them sort of really want to look at their whole lifestyle and change it, reach out for help and to the people that can support you to sort of figure out if that message feels right to you. And that's one of those things with Third Space that's so amazing, is that Third Space is here to encourage and help people through those moments. So main message would be it's okay to reach out for help.
And so what does that look like for people who, young adults or otherwise, who've never gone to see a counselor and might be a little intimidated by what counseling actually is? What can you tell those people?
Yeah, well, I think that it's normal to be intimidated to go to counseling. Counseling a lot of times it's a reputation for being quite difficult, and it can be. But in that sense too, it can also be quite fun and quite enlightening. So my advice would be to look for a counselor that you feel like sort of gives you the vibe where you feel comfortable and happy to talk to them. You can interview counselors. You don't have to go with the first one that you meet. Take your time and kind of explore who you think would feel good to talk to and sort of have those moments with.
What does EMDR stand for?
EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. So basically, yeah, what is it? Big long words, but it's essentially a trauma-focused treatment. And with that, we work with people that would have PTSD, phobias, things that are really difficult that come up in life that might cause sort of maladaptive coping in certain areas. So it's a focused treatment, and it's got amazing results. The evidence that is coming out is showing that EMDR is quite positive in terms of treating those types of problems. So it's kind of getting well sought out by a lot of the community now too. And I will be starting that, I believe, in June for my training. So I'm really excited to try that out soon.
Awesome. So when we talk about mental health, we talk a lot about self-care. Yeah. Given that even though it sounds like you have an amazing and fun time with a lot of your clients, it is still sometimes heavy and draining work. What does self-care mean to you?
Yeah. Self-care is, I feel like it's a journey. I spend a lot of my free time skiing. I like to do things that are quite active, but I love my downtime. And I think one of the biggest and most important parts of my self-care is also having a counselor myself. I'm just as much of a human as my clients, friends, family are, and I have down days too. So I love reaching out to people that I can get that support from, that I can sort of talk to, vent. And then I also love to be able to enjoy having those nice meals now, and being able to go and hang out with my friends in town. I mean, Kelowna has so many beautiful things for us to do. So that's kind of my form of self-care. I think it's individual for everybody though, and they get to define what works best for them.
Thanks for joining us today and telling us a bit about your journey and the work you're doing. That is Mental Health Matters, and we will see you next time.